All right, you guys. So today we're talking a little bit about accessible parks. I was actually really excited when Brittany asked me to talk to you guys a little bit about this because um, as you'll see in my About Me section, I work in early intervention. And so I spend a lot of time in parks with really young children and especially young children with disabilities. So having parks that are accessible to them and they can actually participate and play in is hugely important for my job. And also, I think it's just an important part of having an inclusive community. And if you guys have any questions or comments at any point during this, please don't hesitate to stop me. All right. So, like I said, my husband is a teacher, and I know teachers love outlines of what we're going to talk about. Um, so, we're going to talk a little bit about me, why we need accessible parks, kind of some of the things that I look for to tell me that a child that I work with is going to be able to access a park or a playground. And then we're going to look at some examples, both generally and in the Richmond community. So for those of you who don't know, I am a pediatric physical therapist. I have my bachelor's in neuroscience from William and Mary and my doctor of physical therapy from VCU. I used to work in nursing homes, which was not for me. So I made the transition to working in pediatrics a couple of years ago. Um, I work at SOAR 365 over by the Diamond. You've probably seen the gigantic sign if you've been driving over that way. And there's now a billboard for our park, which is one of the ones I will talk about because it's highly accessible, right on 95, like as you're going by the Boulevard exit. So you've probably seen it when you're driving by. So I work with the early intervention population, meaning that the vast majority of my caseload is children under 3. I do see a few older children on an outpatient basis, but 90% of what I do is early intervention. So why do we need accessible parks? In short, it's part of having accessible and inclusive communities, which I know for you guys as educators, especially, I don't know if any of you are special educators, is something that we all really value. I also think that being around kids who are not typically developing is incredibly beneficial for typically developing kids to learn about the world around them and start to learn about how to have empathy for other people and learn about people who are different for them. Um, and parks are a huge place of socialization for children. Parks and playgrounds, that is a really big place where we meet and interact with peers. And so when we have an accessible park, children with disabilities have an opportunity to play and be included with their peers, and B, their peers have an opportunity to see and meet a person with a disability where maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. Um, and also, it's huge for developing social emotional skills, which is something that we see delayed in a lot of children with disabilities. There's a huge correlation between motor skills and cognitive and social emotional development. And so children who are delayed in motor skills are often delayed in those areas as well. Anybody have any questions about that? All right. So this is just showcasing kind of some of the types of equipment that I see a lot in my practice that really require a lot of accessibility measures to be taken for kids to be able to access a park, whether that be play structures or even just getting into the park. So I have several friends who use wheelchairs. Obviously, that's the classic one that we would think of as far as wheeled mobility for kids who are needing to use something with wheels to get around. But I also work with a lot of kids who use walkers that often look a lot like this going around their back. For just a little bit of extra stability, they might be having issues with their balance or with strength. Or I also have some kids who use a walker for energy conservation where they tire out really quickly. And so having that extra support from the walker lets them explore and enjoy more because they're not getting tired as fast. The other one that I probably see the most with my population is a gait trainer. So this is something I recommend to my clients all the time for kids who are really struggling with their walking skills. It's kind of like a frame that can partially support the child's body weight or not, and also gives them a little bit more support in their balance as they're learning how to walk. So these are kind of some common pieces of equipment that you might see at accessible parks and that would make the need for accessibility even greater. So I also want to talk about some features in a park that I would say that a park needs to have in order for it to be accessible. So I listed some examples here. Obviously, ramps on play structures, if you have any kind of wheeled mobility device, unless that child is really strong and has really good balance, even if they're in a walker, stairs are not going to be a great option. In a wheelchair or a gait trainer, most children are going to be strapped into that somehow. I have a few who are not, but getting that item up and down stairs, which are really common on playground play structures, is going to be difficult, if not impossible. And a lot of times, even if you could do it, put a lot of strain on the bodies of their caregivers and potentially lead to injury. And like I said, even for kids who do have walkers, unless that child has pretty incredible strength and balance, they're going to have a hard time pulling that walker up the stairs behind them. Um, I think a thing we often don't think about and that I have seen before is a park that has ramps on the play structures, but then has some kind of barrier around the playground itself. Maybe that's to keep mulch in or something else, but no ramp to get over that barrier. So once we're in the park, it's accessible, but how is the child going to get in the park? So that's definitely something to pay attention to. If that's something you notice on your school playground, you can find like metal wheelchair ramps on even like Amazon. They're not really expensive. Most of them have a pretty high weight load. I've actually had families use them before who don't have ramps into their homes when their child gets big enough that they're needing a wheelchair and they can no longer be carried into the house. So that's just something to be aware of as a way you can advocate for your students who need some kind of wheeled mobility. I also included in here playground surfaces that can be navigated with wheeled mobility. I don't know if you've ever tried to push a wheelchair over mulch. Most people have not, or grass. It is very, very difficult. That's actually something they make us do in PT school is go all around like downtown Richmond and navigate a bunch of different things in a wheelchair. So I can tell you firsthand how difficult it is. And so I usually look for some kind of like rubberized surface, whether that is like that kind of rubber mulch that's been kind of melded together into a more solid surface, or like rubber tiling where it's still soft enough that if somebody who can maybe walk but doesn't have great balance falls, they're not going to get injured, but it's also even enough that it's easy, to navigate those wheeled mobility devices over it. I also look for minimal height changes between different playground surfaces. So we don't want to see like that barrier wrapping around the playground area in any part of the park or playground, or like a big step up or step down. Some small steps kiddos could maybe navigate with wheel mobility, but anything bigger than like an inch and a half is going to be pretty challenging. Especially for kids who are maybe new at walking, or like if they have a gait trainer, sometimes they may not understand that they would need to lift the front wheels up, or even if they do understand, they may not be able to. The other thing I look for a lot is accessible swings. So I have seen at a lot of different parks in Richmond the type of swing where it's a little bit bigger. It goes all the way up to like over the child's head, and has a little bit more support around their body, and then has a harness that comes down in front of them. Those are great. I also look for wheelchair swings. I have yet to find a wheelchair swing in Richmond. So if anyone knows of a park that has one, please let me know, because that would be a great resource to share with some of my families. But basically a wheelchair swing is a swing where you can roll a wheelchair into it and then the child can swing without having to be transferred out of their mobility device, um, which for some of our little friends, it's a pain to transfer them in and out of their wheelchair, especially if they're strapped in, but it's not extremely difficult. But as they get bigger, it gets more and more difficult. So like for kids who are older elementary or middle school age, those wheelchairs become wheelchair swings become really, really important because transferring them out of their chair in like an environment like a park could even be dangerous for their caregivers and for them. You don't want somebody to run into you mid-transfer and then you end up dropping your child. So the next thing we're going to look at is some pictures. So this is kind of the like playground surfaces that I was talking about. This has a nice level surface, and it's not mulch or grass or anything that's difficult to navigate with wheeled mobility. You will notice if you look at the play structure in the background, I don't see any ramps on this play structure, which I find very interesting that there seems to be a lot of effort putting into having this great surface that everybody can get around on, and then we don't add a ramp to the play structure. So this is showing kind of what I was talking about with having a ramp into and out of the like play area when there's some kind of barrier. So with this park, I'm like, guys, so we have a ramp into there. What is he supposed to do when he gets in there? Because it's all mulch and there's no ramps on the play structures. So unless there's like a sandbox that is at wheelchair height or something else he can interact with that's at wheelchair height, this kid is just going to sit there and watch all of his peers play. So I think it's good to just keep in mind with accessibility that we really have to be looking at accessibility in all parts of the playground, or our kiddos with disabilities are still going to be getting left out of playtime. And then this last one, this one was probably my favorite, kind of showing off all of the fabulous ramps on here. This is also great for inclusivity of families with younger kids, like kids who may not be safe going up and down the stairs yet, but are learning how to walk. They can still come and play and have a great time here as well. And that's actually something I practice with my clients all the time as they're learning how to walk, is going up and down an incline. So now that we saw a couple pictures of different parks that maybe have or don't have some of the accessibility features we talked about, I want to show you guys some examples that are in the community of parks that are fairly accessible. I say fairly accessible because none of them have all of the things that I listed. But most of them have at least two. So shameless plug, I work at SOAR 365. Park 365, which is the park associated with our organization. These pictures looked a lot clearer before I put this on presenter mode, but hopefully y'all can still see. There are lots of ramps going up to all the play structures. We have two play structures at the park, one for little kids and one for big kids, and they both have ramps. You also can't really see it in this picture, but we have a tree house that has a huge ramp leading up to it. And most kiddos really, really love it. And it lets our friends using wheelchairs or other wheeled mobility access it and play with the other kids as well. And a lot of them have a lot of fun with that. We also have that rubberized playground surface. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but the way the park is set up, there are either sidewalks or rubberized playground surfaces where you can get pretty much anywhere in the park without having to go on mulch. There are a couple areas that do have like grass or mulch, but there's pretty much always a pathway that's paved or has the rubber surface so that you can avoid that if you need to. And I have taken a couple clients who use gait trainers in the park, and we've had a lot of success with like getting them to different things that they can play with. They're this little tic-tac-toe board. There's kind of something similar where kids can spin things. that's up on the little kid play structure. And one of my kiddos who uses a gait trainer actually made a little friend while we were up there playing with that. And they were asking questions about like why he had this walker, and it led to a great conversation with his parent as well. So the next one is Huguenot Park. Huguenot Park is a mulch playground surface, which I don't love, but there is there is a fence around the park, but at the gate when you go in, it's just, there's no like step up or barrier or anything like that. Like you could, in theory, like roll a wheelchair, other wheeled mobility. And if you have a kiddo who can't do steps, this is another place that they can go. There's lots and lots and lots of ramps around this park. And there's some that are even like super fun that are kind of closed in and have like almost little stepping stones, but they're not wide enough apart that anyone could like fall in between them or anything like that. So it makes it really fun for the kiddos who haven't quite mastered stairs yet, but are working on those walking skills. And then the last one is Pole Green Park. I have been to and had physical therapy sessions at the other two parks. I have not had a session at this park, but I have been there walking my dog. It does have, I believe it's a mulch surface. I'm like 99% sure, but I could be wrong. So please correct me if I am. But there's ramps up to all of the play structures. I also see like this over here has some ground level components. So like even kids who are struggling with their mobility have some things they could hang on to and move around and play at that as well. So lastly, I know Brittany had mentioned that you guys were interested in some ideas to make school playgrounds more accessible, like at the schools that you work at. So this is just a couple ideas that I had. You can include some ground level activities, so things that can be done without having to go upstairs. Whether that is bringing toys out with you when you go out to recess, or if there's anything already there, or like installing some kind of simple structure, like you can build things out of wood for not very much time, money, or effort, that kids can play with at a ground level. You can also add grip or traction to any stairs that are existing. I think this is a good thing to do whether you have students with disabilities playing on your playground or not, because it's going to reduce the risk of them slipping and falling if the playground's wet. And a lot of those like grippy strips, you can get it just like Home Depot, that you can stick on the edge of the stair to make it a little bit easier for kiddos who are struggling with stairs to go up and down. I would also encourage, if possible, raising up things like sandboxes so that a wheelchair could feasibly fit underneath them. That way kiddos who are using some kind of wheeled mobility can easily participate with that with their peers. And then if you already have a swing set on your playground that doesn't have an accessible swing, I would encourage you to talk to your admin about installing an accessible swing, because anyone can use them, but anyone can't use a regular swing. And my understanding from what I've read is that most of the time you can just like replace the existing swing with an accessible swing. Like you don't have to change anything other than what's hanging on the end of the chain. So that would be like a pretty easy change to hopefully sell your administration on, because I know that can be challenging. Do you guys have any other thoughts of ways to make your playgrounds more accessible, or like questions about something specific that's going on at your school?
I just want to make a quick comment about the swing sets that a wheelchair can fit on. That just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And it's something that I have never seen before, but I can imagine for the the children or whoever who are, what did you say, wheeled mobility? Is that what you said? Is that
Yeah.
how you say it? That having access to a swing that they can stay in their wheelchair for must be just just really great for them. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go on a rabbit hole about swing sets that wheelchairs can easily fit on because I think that that should be something that every playset has.
Right? Like it's one of those things that seems like it would be, once you think about it, it's obvious. But if you don't use a wheelchair to get around every day, it's maybe not obvious. Um, Also, if you guys are ever at Park 365, there is a merry-go-round that's wheelchair accessible, which I think is super cool. You'll see like two kind of silver bars, and basically you lift up that bar and the person in the wheelchair can like wheel into it and then put the bar down so they don't go flying off when the merry-go-round starts spinning. Um, I have yet to see a kiddo in a wheelchair actually using it, unfortunately, because none of my kids who are in wheelchairs are big enough yet. Um, but I think some of our adult participants who are wheelchair users do use that and have a lot of fun with it.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, but yeah, I first learned about the wheelchair swings actually from Instagram. Um, I follow a couple families of children with disabilities just to kind of get more of that perspective in my life. And their daughter, this one family, their daughter uses a power chair. And they mentioned how excited they were that they found a park with a wheelchair swing.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. If you maybe I'll email you after, but I would love the names of those Instagram accounts if you don't mind sharing them, just because I um, inclusion is really important to me, and
Mhm.
so I would just love additional ideas. And I'm a really big visual learner, so I would love to see it that way, if you don't mind.
Yeah. And I feel like so many parents of kids with disabilities have such great ideas about inclusion because they have so much firsthand experience. Um, and I find that I hope my families learn something from me about how to help their child progress in their motor skills, but I also learned so much from them.
So, hi, everybody. I apologize for being late, um, but I want to put a plug in for one of the playgrounds that are here in my area. And I live in Northern Virginia. And the playground that my kids have gone to for a long time is called Clemmy Jontry Park, and it's in McLean. And the people who decided upon it, they named the park after their children. So it's their four children's names like all smushed together. And so that's how they came up with Clemmy Jontry. But it is like the most inclusive park I've ever been to. So everything, Sam, that you described is there.
Awesome.
And like, and I'm so grateful that it's here because everyone has been able to play on it, regardless of their abilities, right? And because of that exposure and the thoughtfulness of this family who decided that, it is important to include everybody in play, I believe that when children do see others who have, like mobility devices or crutches or something that makes them stand out a little bit, it isn't a big deal. It's like, oh, well, you have a wheelchair. Come play over here with us because, you can fit on here too. Or, you know, you can go up this ramp and then we can go and play on this together. So
Mhm.
just hearing this presentation just brings back so many happy memories for me for when my children were of playground age. They've sadly find other joys in life now.
That's awesome. I also just realized I completely forgot to include something in this presentation, and that is parks being fenced in. That is something that my families, especially of children on the autism spectrum, look for a lot, is fenced in parks, especially with one entry and exit point. because that way, if we have a child who tends to elope, they are not going to run out into traffic when they elope, and it is much easier to kind of allow them to run free and enjoy their time in the park without their parent having to be right next to them all the time, because we know that they're safe.
That
So,
is a great point, because I was at Costco one day and it was a dad with a son, and this child broke free from the dad's and like just ran in the parking lot.
mhm.
And my heart just stopped. Like I couldn't get out of my car and help them. And I was just hoping that nothing happened. And thankfully nothing did, but it was very scary to see.
Well, and also even parents of multiple children. Like it's one of those things where I don't know if you've ever heard people talk about curb cuts of an example as something that's intended for someone with a disability benefiting everyone, but like strollers can use curb cuts, roller skates, skateboards, but kind of in the same vein, if it's just you and your four children at the park, it's a lot easier to relax and enjoy your time at the park if you're not having to watch them to make sure that they aren't running in opposite directions. I mean, obviously we still expect children to or adults to watch their children at the park, but hopefully the adults can relax a little bit more and enjoy their time at the park, even with multiple young children. Because I work with a couple families with twins, and when one runs one way and one runs the other, I'm very glad that I'm there for the therapy session so I can go catch one of them. Do you guys have any other questions or things you'd like to discuss? All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, guys. It was great to talk to you. And like I said, if you have any questions, I probably should have included my email address on here. Didn't even occur to me, but Brittany has it. So you can always ask her for my email address or my phone number. You're welcome to email me or text me.
Thank you so much for everything, Sam. I really, really appreciate it. I've already texted Brittany to tell her that you're amazing, and I'm so happy that she coordinated this. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Um, that was so informative, and I think it'll help a lot of people hearing that information. So thank you.
No problem. I'm glad I could come talk to you guys.
Hey, Sam, it's Patricia. I just thought of a quick question. The park that you mentioned at SOAR, is that open to the public or
Yes.
no? It is. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's one I know where it is, but I didn't know there was a park there too. So that's great. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. The only time when it's not open to the public is early in the morning on Mondays. They
Okay.
close the park to do maintenance. But
Okay.
I think it opens at 11 on Mondays. Every other day it's open sunrise to sunset.
Okay, awesome.
It kind of looks like it's not open to the public because it is like fully fenced in and there's only one entry and exit.
Okay.
And it's a gate that closes. So even though you see that it is open to the public, we would love to have you.
Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for joining us, and you're welcome to come back anytime.